Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Welcome to, I guess I can't really call it the MMA podcast because this is not the MMA podcast. This is a special little bonus feature. This is a bonus podcast of sorts. Oh, yeah. Where's that fucking... Podcast. There it is, Joe. Thanks, Joe. And, it's a Sunday night. We got a bunch of UFCs coming up. We actually have, I think, 3 UFCs coming up in the next 10 days. Wednesday, Saturday, and then again Wednesday. So we're just talking on Skype. We want to chat a little UFC, a little MMA, and we decided to bring you guys a little featurette of sorts. We're going to talk about 5 topics. All of us have lists, five items on that list, and we will get into that a little bit deeper. But first and foremost, you just heard his beautiful, sweet, milky voice, and that's the voice of Chris Lowenstein. What's going on?
I'll tell you what, man. I have been, I've been doing some Dolph Lundgren work, man. Trying to look big, floating in and out of, movie segments, trying to kick ass, do some martial arts here. So, thank you. How about you, man? How you doing, Ross? The best Jew in the business.
No comment.
No comment? You fucking doing bad? What the fuck's going on? We all were talking before the show, and now we're like, what's up, Ross? And it's like,
I'm ready to get down to business.
Oh, okay.
This man just wants to talk business.
It's sexual. It's getting sexual.
I'm watching HBO, this movie Answers to Nothing. I'm watching on mute. I'm pretty sure Joseph Benavidez is playing a cop in it. That or I'm racist. But I am doing fine, settling into Denver pretty well.
You're very racist.
I am pretty racist. But it's usually unintentional because I grew up in the South. I don't even know when I'm being racist. So then when I am being racist for real, I can just pretend like I didn't know I was being racist in the first place. Let's move on. I guess if Ross doesn't have anything to add, I'll plug his Twitter forum. It's Ross Finkelstein, E before the L. He wants to get down to business, and tonight's business, we don't even have a name for this shit yet. The Final 5, maybe. Who fucking knows? It's a working title.
Oh, dude, it's 5 for 5.
5 for 5, the Final 5 rounds, who the fuck knows. But we're going to talk about 5 different topics, and each of those topics, we got to type top 5. Our top 5 topics tonight, we're going to talk about the top 5 upcoming fights we're pumped for. Then we're going to talk about the top 5 fighters without a UFC championship currently. So currently the best fighters without UFC gold. Our favorite top 5 finishes of all time. The top 5 fighters we'd like to hang out the most with. And then we're going to finish it up with the top 5 fighters outside of the UFC. 5 topics, 5 items for each topic. Pretty fucking simple. You all ready to get down to business? I know Ross is. Chris, you ready to go?
I'll tell you what, as long as Ross is down to get down with brass tacks, I'm in.
Let's do it, cocksuckers. Alright, and we're going to start off with the top 5 upcoming fights you're pumped for. Ross said he wanted to get down to business. I'll let him do just that. Ross, what are the top 5 fights you're pumped for?
Well, to break it down a little bit, we got a lot of really, really, really good fights coming up. Just some great title fights. We got a lot of rematches. Some great rematches that stand out. You got Silva Weidman. You got Henderson Pettis, Chandler Alvarez. It's very, very rematch heavy this year.
3 of my top 5 are actually rematches. You fucking said it.
Yeah, in my top 5, I've got 3 rematches, and I have a trilogy fight in there too. Right off the bat, number 5, I have Michael Chandler versus Eddie Alvarez too. If you haven't seen the first fight, stop listening to the show right now. Go to YouTube, find the first fight.
That's why I love
absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
It is one of the greatest fights of all time. You have to see it. It launched Michael Chandler into superstardom. I truly believe he's one of the best in the world, but we'll get into that later. Eddie Alvarez is a fantastic talent. He hasn't fought in almost over a year. It's going to be over a year when he gets into the cage. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he's one of the best lightweights in the world. And this is a fantastic rematch. If you're not watching this rematch, there's a problem. You're missing out. You're missing out on two of the best lightweights in MMA. Period.
When was that first fight?
That would be December 2010.
November 19th, 2011, I believe.
Were both you guys able to watch it live? I actually had to watch a repeat of it because I was working a Tampa Bay Bucks game. I can recall where I was in the stadium, tabbing through my fucking phone, looking at the results. I think the same fight had Gilbert Melendez and Jorge Masvidal, right? And a cyborg fight too, if I'm not mistaken. That was a jam-packed strike force.
I remember that night having UFC 139. Shogun Hendo was the same night as the Chandler Alvarez title fight.
Was? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Shit. Well, did you watch it live?
No, I was watching the UFC pay-per-view, and I had heard that the fight was incredible. I went back, I watched it, and immediately I thought the exact same thing. It was incredible. Chris, you wanted to say something there?
No, not at all.
Okay, then. I'll continue on. Number 4, I have another fantastic lightweight rematch. Ben Henderson defends his lightweight title against Anthony Pettis. That's next Saturday. Crazy rematch, a rematch from WEC 53. Henderson was the defending champion in his own hometown. Pettis comes in, takes the belt, final fight in WEC history. Again, one of the greatest fights of all time. If you haven't seen this first fight, go back, stop listening now, and watch that first fight. It's one of the greatest fights I've ever seen. Back and forth, could have gone either way, and of course, you have the Showtime kick to top it all off. Both guys have improved tremendously. Ben Henderson has actually gone on from losing that fight to win the lightweight title and defend it 3 times now. So this is going to be an absolute war. I cannot wait to see this one. Number 3, I have JDS, Cain Velasquez 3. First 2 fights, you didn't know what was coming. Third fight, who knows what's going to happen. Cain could win this fight. JDS could win this fight.
Yeah, I sort of think, I want to say it's going to be a one-sided fight because that's what we've seen the first time. It was a quick Dos Santos knockout. The second time it was a 25-minute beatdown. I think these are the top 2 guys in the division, and I think they're pretty close matchup-wise. I just can't see them having a close fight because the last 2 times around were just beatdowns. I think it's either going to be a quick JDS knockout or shit. Honestly, I think Cain's just going to do what he did the second time around again. Yeah, I got there. I think Cain is going to come out on top. I think Cain is just superior pretty much everywhere. His boxing for MMA is really, really good, and JDS is going to try and keep his hands low to stop the takedown, or he's going to keep his hands up to stop getting punched in the face. So he's either getting taken down or he's getting punched in the face because he can't stop both. He can't keep his hands up and stop a takedown. And he sure as hell can't keep his hands low and stop getting punched in the face. So for me, that's the number 3. That's the third biggest fight I'm most pumped for this year. Number 2 has not been officially announced yet, but we all know it will happen at some point. And that is Chael P. Sonnen versus Wanderlei Silva. The beatdown. It is going to be a one-sided pounding. Chael is swinging the hammer. Vandy's got nothing to offer him. He's asking for more money because he knows this fight it's not going to do anything for him unless he's getting paid. So this to me is my second biggest fight of the year for me because I'm a huge Chael Sonnen fan. I cannot wait to see
him shut up the clown, Wanderlei Silva, who's been talking for 2 years. It's over, Wanderlei. And number 1, without a shadow of a doubt, Chris Weidman versus Anderson Silva 2, the rematch, the biggest rematch in MMA history. Chris Weidman, middleweight champion. I've been singing his praises forever. I said that he was going to beat Anderson. He beat Anderson, and I'm telling you right now, he's going to beat Anderson again. Anderson Silva is the greatest fighter of all time. I cannot doubt him at all, but he has met his match. Chris Weidman is the new breed. He is dangerous in every aspect of the game, and he will defeat Anderson Silva on December 28th. And those are my top 5 fights that I am most pumped for. Jake, back to you.
Yeah, I briefly wanted to talk about Wanderlei, too. What did you think about that video he made with, like, flashing lights in the background? It was a mix between, I think I tweeted this, it was a mix between a shitty David Lee Roth music video with, like, the music going, like the shitty rock music going in the background, combined with, like, a horror movie, just because Wanderlei, like the lighting was weird, and there were, like, these gruesome shadows being, going across his face. The dude isn't, exactly a runway model. So, it was obviously a bizarre video, and I thought it was weird that half of the video he's, like, screaming at the camera, like, Gelson, I will break your face. In the other half, he was saying, you inspire me. You, the fans, I love you. Like, it's like what? Who are you talking to here, Wanderlei? But like Ramsey said, Ramses is not here on the podcast, but he is obviously here in spirit.
Word on the street.
That's right. He's always here in spirit. He's saying Wanderlei is emotionally disturbed, and I agree with him, and shit, he'll probably off himself in the next 6 months or something here. The man is just not with it, and I hope after he loses the Chelson and he can see a sports psychologist or something, because he's obviously not well.
Yeah, I think Wanderlei has completely lost it. He does not want to fight Chelson, and he wants to fight someone who will stand with him, and because he's basically being forced into fighting Chelson, and he is going to do everything he possibly can to make himself look crazy so that he can get out of this fight. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to kill a man before this, or he robbed a bank, or teamed up with Mayhem on a couple of chicks. Who knows what's going to happen? I think Vandy has lost it.
For sure. Chris, are you with us yet? Are you back from the abyss? The great abyss? Chris is not back. All right. Chris had to go poop or pee or something along the lines of that. But I'll start my fucking list. I guess that Chris isn't here. I would have Alvarez Chandler 2 5th, but for the sake of bringing another fight into the talks, this Wednesday's rematch of Carlos Condit and Martin Kampmann 2, that's going to be a hell of a fight. Condit, I really do think he is one of the best fighters in the UFC. We will get to that in our next topic, actually. Condit, he's a hell of a fighter, and one of the few black marks on his record is Martin Kampmann. He lost a split decision, I believe, in a fight that could have gone either way. Sort of like Rory wants his revenge against Condit. I'm sure Condit wants his revenge against Kampmann. He's gonna get it in this fight. Both of these guys are just assassins. They're so capable on the ground at doing anything. I think both dudes will probably want to keep it standing, and it'll be a very interesting fight. The fourth one's sort of in the same topic of both of these guys are just gonna get down to it and brawl. We're not gonna see a sparring match. Pat Healy and the Eagle Khabib Nurmagomedov, or however the fuck you pronounce his last name.
Nurmagomedov.
Yeah. Both of these guys are still under the radar a little bit, so to speak. Healy, people know about because of the Miller win. I don't think many people really knew about his record in Strikeforce and what he was doing over there, and how he was next in line for a title shot against Melendez before Melendez backed out of the fight. But Healy, a hell of a fighter and a guy who I think is really a future UFC champion. And Khabib Nurmagomedov, the Eagle, this undefeated prospect out of Asia or Europe or whatever the fuck Russia's in. He looks really good. So, both of these guys are riding pretty impressive hype trains. You got to respect Pat Healy because he lost a lot of money for smoking the sacred herb, ladies and gentlemen. It was a fucking travesty.
Kicked some ass.
Yeah, he kicked Jim Miller's ass to bits, but didn't, it just sucks that he tested positive, but we all know weed
Weed kills you. Weed makes you worthless.
That's right.
It's terrible.
I had to set up that drop in the most obvious of fashions. So I got Healy and the Eagle fourth. Number 3, Bindo and Pettis 2, the first time around for the WEC championship, I believe. Bindo and Pettis, it was a hell of a fight. It was real close. Pettis landed that Showtime kick off of the cage, which won the judges over, won him the fight basically. And both of them kind of have a chip on their shoulder for the fight for two different reasons, which you gotta love. Pettis obviously wants UFC gold. I have him as my second best fighter without UFC gold, which we'll get to in our next topic. But Bindo, this is his only loss, so he's trying to defend his belt, I believe for the 5th time, trying to avenge the only loss on his record. That's going to be awesome. Another championship fight we're going to see is number 2 on my list, GSP Hendricks. It's a fight where I think we see one of the most legendary streaks in UFC history end. I think Johnny Hendricks has the wrestling. I don't know if he has the wrestling to overpower and dominate GSP, but he has the wrestling to keep GSP from doing that to him. He has the wrestling to keep it standing. And if this is just a stand-up match between Johnny Hendricks and GSP, GSP's not making it into the 3rd round. So I have that second, and I think we're going to see Johnny Hendricks take the belt from George St-Pierre. And first, like Ross, I got to have Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman, the rematch. This is the most anticipated rematch ever. Silva, I mean, talk about streaks being broken. Silva losing to Chris Weidman was alongside Fedor Verdum, but I would argue that Silva had the best run ever. Just because of the caliber opponents he faced. I think he had 10 title defenses, should have been 11, but one of his opponents didn't make weight. And Chris Weidman stepping in there, the All-American, finishing Anderson Silva in the 2nd round. And honestly, I'm still on the fence, but I'm leaning toward Weidman. But man, it is hard to pick against a guy like Anderson Silva. Talk about our top finishes of all time. I thought about having all Anderson Silva finishes because he's just such a hell of a fighter. But honestly, I'm leaning toward Chris Weidman to do what he did at UFC 162 and come away with the belt again. And shit, his prospects after that will probably be either Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen. We'll see. Chris, it sounds like you're back. Did you finish whatever you needed to do? I hope it was a big poop.
It was a giant shit.
It was a giant shit. Oh, and if any of you guys ever want to jump in and interrupt me when I'm talking about any topic, go ahead and do it, because that's how I'm gonna do it to you if I feel like I want to pass an idea back and forth. But Chris, I guess we're passing over to you the top 5 fights you're pumped for.
Yeah, definitely, man. Number 1 for me is Pettis and Bindo 2. I thought their first fight was legendary. It wasn't as good as Bindo versus Cerrone 1, but it was up there, like right next to that, and top, some of the greatest fights of all time. So I'm looking forward to it.
It's really weird how Bindo was in the WEC known for being one of the most exciting guys, and now he's starting to garner a reputation in the UFC of being one of the least exciting guys, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. Bindo actually came to the UFC, and he hasn't finished one fight since he came over to the UFC. And you have Anthony Pettis, who is finishing left and right. He finished Donald Cerrone. He took out Lozon with a head kick. I mean, he's looking like a finisher.
Finishing more guys than Jenna Jameson.
Oh, oh. There you go, man.
Ooh.
Oh. And number 2, I got Condit Campman. I'm really looking forward to this fight. I think both of them are different fighters. The first time it was a really technical fight, but it was also not very exciting. I didn't think it was that great. So I think this time Condit, he's put on some muscle mass. You know, he's become a different fighter. Campman was nearly at a title shot and got knocked out by Johnny Hendricks. So I think Campman has a bunch to prove. I think it's going to be a great fight. Number 3, Silva Weidman. I mean, what else can I say besides what you guys just brought up? Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman 2 is going to be one of the greatest fights of all time. Can't wait. And GSP Hendricks at number 4. GSP used to be my favorite fighter, but Johnny Hendricks is shown to be a killer and a guy who can mix up his wrestling with his knockout power. Great fighter. Number 5 is Chandler Alvarez 2. If you've seen the first fight, you know what I'm talking about. Chandler and Alvarez went to war. They busted each other up. They're both bleeding and you know, digging deep. 4th round chokeout by Michael Chandler. So I can't wait. I think the second fight's going to trump the first fight.
You think Alvarez eventually because all this stuff, I think he has signed a 2-fight contract. Do you guys think after the next 2 fights he comes over to the UFC? Ross?
Yeah, no matter what happens, he will end up in the UFC. If I can actually just break down his contract a little bit, his contract is a 2-fight maximum, 1 fight minimum, obviously. He needs to fight Michael Chandler no matter what on November 2nd, November 9th, whatever the date is. And then if he wins the fight, he has to do 1 more fight, a rubber match, sometime probably next year, early next year in the spring maybe. He has to do a rematch against Chandler. No matter what happens in that fight, whether he wins or loses, he is free to go. He is an unrestricted free agent. No matching, none of this crap. But if he loses to Michael Chandler on November 2nd, then he is free to go. And that means if he loses a very controversial, close split decision, he can walk right into the UFC riding high still.
That would be hilarious.
Despite having an L on his record. And I think personally that would probably be the best case scenario for Eddie Alvarez if he wants to get into the UFC as quickly as possible. Because if he gets finished by Michael Chandler, that's not great to go into the UFC on. But if he loses a close, controversial decision, he can walk to the UFC, and who knows? He could very well win the UFC belt, and in 5 years we could see Eddie Alvarez versus Michael Chandler for the UFC championship. So we'll see what happens.
We will see what happens. You're talking about Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler. I have a feeling Michael Chandler is going to come up 3 times on 3 different lists of yours, Ross. So that'll probably be a new record. Chris, what do you think? You think Alvarez is truly going to split ties with Viacom?
I would only hope so. I think Alvarez, his best chance at making the most money he can and doing the best that he can as a fighter would be in the UFC. Every second he spends with Bellator, he's kind of losing out on his ultimate goal, but he had to do that. That's why he chose to stick around. Chandler Alvarez too, man. Both these guys are amazing fighters. I can't really choose, one out of the 2, but I think Chandler would take it if I had to choose.
Yeah, they're both great fighters. Speaking of great fighters without UFC championships, let's get to our next topic. And that next topic is the top 5 fighters currently without UFC gold. Basically, you can choose anyone on this list as long as they don't currently have a UFC championship, and that includes an interim belt. So Renan Barão ineligible, along with the other, I believe 8 or 9. I guess now 9. Yeah, I guess there's now 10 UFC champions in Barão, Rousey, Johnson, Cruz, Aldo, Bindo, GSP, Weidman, Jones, and fucking Cain Velasquez there. How did I almost forget Cain Velasquez, the baddest man in the world? But who are the best fighters without UFC gold? Chris, I guess let's do it in reverse order. Why not? Chris, who are your top 5?
Well, outside of UFC title holders, I would have to say number 1, Michael Chandler. I think he has shown his ability. He's a fantastic mixed martial artist with a great game. He's well-rounded. He's got wrestling, striking, submissions.
Even with his schedule of opponents? Because I feel like the only real killer, I mean, yeah, he's beaten killers, but and I'm hearing reverb, so somebody should probably turn down their speakers a little bit. But, I don't know, I feel like the only top 15, top 20 guy Chandler's ever beat is Alvarez, which it's good because he'll have another chance to prove himself in November.
Yeah, very true. I pick Michael Chandler's number 1 because I think skill-wise...
Number 1 or number 5? This is a countdown show, cocksucker. You start at 5, son.
Alright, number 5, Anthony Pettis.
Wait, I thought number 5 was Michael Chandler.
No, I had that reversed. Now you know what's
he was your number 1. Damn, he was your fucking number 1.
So you ruined the surprise for everyone.
Damn, he's your number 1. Shit, well, 5 is Pettis. I'll let you explain your reasoning behind that.
Yeah, sure. Number 5, I think Anthony Pettis is insanely talented, but his opponents in the last couple years, since December 2010 till current date, he's only had 4 fights in the UFC. So he's not very well traveled. He lost to Guida. He beat Jeremy Stevens by decision and then knocked out Donald Cerrone with a body kick and Joe Lozano with a head kick. And that's very formidable, but I don't think that would get him anywhere higher than number 5. So number 4 is Johnny Hendricks. He's basically knocked out everyone on his way to a title shot, and he's about to get it. And number 3, I got Anderson Silva. He's on the track back to the title. Obviously, he wants to get it back. And number 2, I got Daniel Cormier. I think he's insanely talented. He knocked out Bigfoot, dominated Josh Barnett, and then beat Frank Mir. That's pretty awesome. So I think without UFC gold, he could go down and totally challenge John Jones. He'd do well. Number 1, obviously, Michael Chandler. I think he has all the abilities to make a champion at lightweight in the UFC.
Wow, you really think he beats Pettis? That's a strong claim.
I think he could, yes.
Hell yeah. Well, damn, Cormier, I don't know why I didn't think of Cormier, but Cormier is not on my list merely because I didn't think of him. Honestly, though, Cormier might be 6 on my list because I really, really like my top 5. Number 5, it might seem like it's a little bit of bias, like I'm playing favorites. Number 5, I got Chael Sonnen. Think about it. Since, I think, UFC 95, so back when UFCs were in double digits, years ago, since then, he's only lost to the top 2 greatest fighters of all time, and Anderson Silva and John Jones. And he won 5 of 7 rounds against Anderson Silva. John Jones, I don't even want to revisit that fight. But I really think Sonnen is a killer. If he ends up fighting Vitor for a middleweight crack, I think Chael would be an underdog, but I really think Chael wins the fight. It'd be interesting to see him fight Weidman. It'd be interesting to see him fight Anderson again. It'd be interesting to see him fight Vitor. It looks like his next fight is going to be an ass whooping on Vanderlei, though. So I don't know. I hope he gets that next crack sooner rather than later, because I think he's 36, which isn't that old, but still, once you start flirting with 40, you know you don't really have that much time with the belt left. So I have Chael at number 5, and once again, interrupt me if you feel like arguing or agreeing or adding any points, whatever the fuck. Interrupt the shit out of me, because I'm going to pay you the same respect. Number 4, I have Carlos Condit, which, it sucks the guy isn't even the second best in his own division, but Condit is just such a killer. I mean, he can sub you, he can finish you. I think he has 13 subs and 13 KOs, or TKOs. He's finished every single one of his fights except for the Nick Diaz victory.
I'm glad he's on your list, to be honest, man. The fact that that guy is on your list, I'm happy just based off of that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Carlos Condit is one of these dudes. I actually think we see him get a KO against Martin Kamen, and Martin Kamen is an iron-chinned motherfucker. Just the guy's striking is so unpredictable, but it's different in a way of like an Anderson Silva, where like an Anderson Silva is just sort of throwing these flashy things out. Condit isn't necessarily pretty, but he does things that frustrate guys, whether it's doubling up kicks, doubling up punches. I mean, there were a few times in the Nick Diaz fight where Diaz just got caught flush on the face with a head kick or a punch, just because he's always throwing these weird combos out, which I really like. Number 3 in the same division, Johnny Hendricks. I think he's proven he's a hell of a fighter, and like I said before, I think he takes the belt from George St-Pierre, so I don't need to go any further on that one. Number 2, Chris, you're number 5, Anthony Pettis. The dude is a fucking wrecking ball, man. I mean, he goes up against these guys who aren't easy to finish, and he mauls them, whether it's Joe Lauzon, whether it's Donald Cerrone. I mean, he would have had a good chance against Aldo, and he's got a good chance against Bendo. He's the only guy that, has ever beat Bendo. So I got Pettis number 2. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's a great point. We don't really ever bring that up, do we? As a point that Benson Henderson, a guy that has a lot of questionable decisions in the UFC, but has looked great in other fights, is fighting in the UFC, and Anthony Pettis is coming up, and he finally gets his shot. And we all forget that Anthony Pettis beat Ben Henderson by decision.
Both of these guys.
I forget that.
Both of these guys have a huge chip on their shoulder. Like I mentioned earlier, Pettis doesn't have the belt. Bendo wants revenge on his only loss. So I got Pettis number 2. Number 1, Anderson Silva, which it's funny because I think Pettis and Hendricks have a better chance to get the title back just based on who they're fighting, even though I have Anderson Silva number 1. I don't know if I necessarily am as adamant about him taking the belt back, but Anderson Silva, in my eyes, is still the greatest fighter out there. With or without a UFC belt, if we were talking about the greatest fighters, period, Anderson would probably still be number 1, even though he just lost. It wasn't. I mean, I feel like the fight against Chael damaged Anderson's rep more than the fight against Weidman did, because anyone can get knocked out. Chael fucking just put him on his ass for 20 minutes. But the man's the greatest of all time, and I gotta put him number 1, Anderson Silva. God, I cannot wait for UFC 168. And the beautiful thing, before I pass it to Ross, the one thing I want to say about UFC 168, there are so many fighters that back out of fights. We've had so many main events get canceled. We've had so many fights we're looking forward to never happen. We're going to see Weidman Silva, because both guys, say whatever you want about either guy, these guys don't back out of fights. Whether it's a broken rib, whether it's the flu, whether they've got to drop 30 pounds in like 36 hours and go on an IV afterwards, these guys are fucking fighters. And whether one of them gets injured, gets sick, I mean, barring like a broken leg, these guys, come hail, wind, sleet, or snow, are going to step into the fucking cage on December 28th. Ross?
Yeah, I have to agree with you completely on a couple of those points. Definitely the Anderson Silva points, and especially Chris Weidman. He pulled out of one fight. He pulled out of the Tim Boetsch fight. He had a completely torn shoulder. He needed surgery on that. There's really nothing you can do. He would have gotten in the cage if he was allowed to, but they just told him no.
Yeah, if you can't drive a car, that's like, oh, all right, fucking get surgery.
Yeah. This guy, he fought Damian Maia on 10 days' notice. He cut 32 pounds in 8 days, 7 days, and nearly died trying to do it. I mean, the guy could barely walk to the scale the day of the weigh-ins. He was on an IV after the fight. He just felt like shit the day before and the night before, and he still went out there and he dominated Damian Maia in every aspect of the game. Striking, grappling,
Hail
cardio
Lucifer.
even.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyway, my top 5 fighters without UFC gold. First off, Johnny Hendricks is number 5. Johnny Hendricks has every tool to be a champion. He's got knockout power. He's got great striking, great grappling. He's got heart. He's got a chin. He has everything you need to be a champion. And I truly believe he will get it done. I truly believe he will become a champion and defeat George St-Pierre later this year. But to me, he is the number 5 best guy without the belt right now, and he'll come off the list in November, in my opinion. Number 4, Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler is the best lightweight in the world. You just don't know it yet. He's locked up in Bellator for the next 8 fights. It sucks, but he'll get to showcase quick finishes. I think he'll finish everyone. I think he finishes everyone very quickly.
You think Bellator brings in anyone of note for him to fight? Because once Eddie's gone, I mean, what do you have? I mean, like, there's no one in that lightweight division, it seems like. Unless War Machine decides to drop 15 pounds. That would be a real threat.
Oh, yeah. I think you'll see guys filter out of the UFC. There'll be guys who are cut, guys who don't deserve to be cut, that'll be cut, who will end up in Bellator. He'll get some people, but at the end of the day, there really isn't anyone for him to fight after Eddie Alvarez. It's just the truth. No one is on his level. No one's even close to being on his level. I mean, Rick Hahn is not on his level.
Okay.
Michael Chandler's in a league of his own.
In a desperate move to generate interest in his fighting, Tito Ortiz cuts off his arm.
Come on.
I mean, we've seen it work before.
I mean, I've seen Tito.
And I've seen people with one arm. So, I mean, Tito, his arm's probably 30 pounds. He cuts an additional 10. He's fighting at 155, baby. One-arm Tito versus Michael Chandler.
Tito, two-arm Tito wouldn't beat Michael Chandler. But why are we even talking about it?
He sells his arm on eBay and nets $13.35. Sorry, go ahead.
That bum's name isn't allowed to be mentioned on this show from here on out. I'm hijacking this again. Number 3 for me, Chael Sonnen. This man should be a champion in every weight class. He should be champion in 2 weight classes. He was seconds away from becoming light heavyweight champion against John Jones. And he was seconds away from becoming middleweight champion against Anderson Silva. I truly believe that if Anderson Silva at the time was not in the division, Chael Sonnen without a doubt would have been champion. And I truly believe if John Jones wasn't in the light heavyweight division right now, I think Chael Sonnen would be the light heavyweight champion. I think he can beat anybody in that weight class other than John Jones, and it's only because of John Jones's just massive size and the combination of the freak size with the technique and the power. He's unbeatable.
Chael Sonnen now has a clear route to the title. I think I'm right there with you, man. I'm excited for that. I'm Team Darkside now, baby. Yeah!
Yeah, Chael Sonnen, just when it looked like that the Jones fight would be the last time he ever fought for a title, comes out with this first round submission win, and he puts himself right back in there to get a title shot somewhere down the line at either at 205 or 185. I mean, John Jones is destined for heavyweight at this point. If he beats his next 3 opponents, he beats Gustafsson, he beats Cormier, he beats Glover, and then maybe Phil Davis, moves up to heavyweight, belt's vacated. Chael Sonnen could very well take that belt, and I truly believe he would. I think he beats anyone there. Rashad Glover, I think his wrestling style is just so grinding, and just there's so much pressure that he puts on his opponents. I don't think anyone can handle it. Number 2 is probably the most dangerous, scary guy in the company right now, and that's Vitor Belfort. Normally, Vitor Belfort at this age would not be number 2 on this list. He wouldn't even be on this list. But the fact that Vitor Belfort has maintained his testosterone use and is now on supplements we don't even know about, that you can't even test for because you don't even know they exist. He's found a way to cheat, and because of it, he is now the scariest guy in MMA. So to me, he is number 2 without UFC gold. He can beat anybody on the roster except for Chris Weidman, Anderson Silva, and Chael Sonnen.
Vitor Belfort is 0-1 Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
I don't care what you put in your body, man. I don't give a shit.
Cream cheese.
I do, especially when you are that age and you're fighting people who are younger than you, and you're trying to.
Can you blame him? 37 years old. Can you blame
but
the guy?
He's also got 15 years more experience than those other kids.
Can you blame the guy for trying to get one up on the younger kids who are stronger, faster, better built, better cardio, better technique? You can't blame him.
He ends up getting the advantage because he's able to bring his testosterone levels back to a 28-year-old's levels. He can get the same testosterone levels as Chris Weidman. Now he's got 15 years extra training on Chris Weidman, so now he's in the same shape. He feels just as good as Chris Weidman. He's just as fast. He's just as strong. Plus, he has so much more experience and so much more.
But Chris Weidman is riding high on the assault of Anderson Silva and having a great camp and being young.
I was just using an example. I'm not saying I think he would lose to Chris Weidman, but I was just using an example to show how Vitor is cheating.
What I love is, I think about a year and a half ago, Vitor Belfort came out against TRT saying, you know what, I don't like this. This is like MMA is turning into Formula One, and instead of the drivers deciding who wins and who the best car, the best fighter is, it's the engineers, and the engineered fighters are winning now, not necessarily the best fighters. And that was a really good analysis, and I think since then he's learned, if you can't beat him, join him. He was against TRT use originally, and then thought, you know what, all of these other old fucks are doing it. I'm fucking trying to keep up with dudes like John Jones. And we don't know when he started taking, whether it was after the Jones loss, after the Anderson loss, before that even. But I have a feeling after the Jones loss, he thought, damn, if I was just a little stronger, I would have gotten that armbar. So he definitely either upped the dose or started taking, but he's made a complete 180 from being anti-usage to kind of being the guy who leads the way in usage.
Yeah, and he was on TRT for the Jones fight, but around the Bisping fight is when he found these new supplements.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, you think about the top knockouts of 2013, he might have the 2 top knockouts of the year.
Yeah, the one that rivals both those to me, just for the significance, is Silva Weidman.
Also,
he definitely has some flashes.
Silva Overeem was.
There's
that was a knockout.
Big one.
And Hunt and JDS, maybe biggest knockouts of the year, is a topic for another show.
Yes, indeed, another top 5 list. But we get to number 1 now. Number 1 is the former UFC middleweight champion, the greatest fighter of all time, the man we love to hate and hate to love, Anderson Silva. He is still one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world. Just because he was knocked out by a younger, faster, better Chris Weidman does not mean he is he's not as good as some of the other guys. He is still just as good as everyone else, but he is older now, and he's going to show signs of being older. Plus, he was just brutally knocked out. He was hit multiple times. His head bounced off the canvas. His chin's not going to be the same. He's not going to be able to take a punch as well as he used to. So I do think he gets knocked out in his next fight. I do think this is the start of the end for Anderson Silva. But until that happens, he is still the best fighter in the world right now without a UFC belt.
That's right. Yeah, he's had a pretty long career. This has obviously been the most impressive stretch. Hard to not make the guy number one with all the shit he has done. And I guess if Chris, you don't have anything to add in, we'll move on to the next topic. And the next topic, let's fight, cocksuckers. Let's fucking run it back. Top 5 finishes of all time. I'll start it up. We're fucking doing random ass orders, ladies and gentlemen. Top 5 finishes of all time. Number 5, man, this is a really tough list because there are so many finishes I really like. Actually, Anderson, like, I could have him 1 through 5, but I'm only having one Anderson finish. Number 5, Diaz, Gogo Plata's Takanori Gomi. Back in Pride in Vegas, Diaz tested positive for weed. It was turned over to a no contest. But you know what? That was still a beautiful finish. In my book, that Gogo Plata on Takanori Gomi was absolutely beautiful. Nick Diaz, not only a good stand-up artist, but a technical jiu-jitsu specialist. And we were aiming to keep this about an hour, so you might notice we're going to speed this shit up. We're going into the lightning rounds, ladies and gentlemen. We're starting into the championship rounds with the next topic. Number 5, Mir, Gogo Plata's Gomi. Number 4, Mir snaps Big Nog's arm off. That was vicious.
That was so brutal.
I still turn and cringe, and I hate to get verbose, and I'll keep it short for the next 3. But I was in a bar, and I was probably one of the only people who knew a lot about jiu-jitsu and MMA, and when he got the position and started twerking, no one really was freaking out except me, and I stood up, and I was like, oh, because I'd seen it before and seen that is not something, and I knew he's twerking the fucking arm. Big Nog's not gonna tap, and Mir's broken arms before. I was like, no, and because I started saying no, everybody in the bar looks up at the big screen, and a couple seconds later, his humerus snaps into 2 pieces. Everybody shrieks. Everybody probably lost their appetite. I probably cost the restaurant hundreds, but yeah, that was a vicious tap that earned Mir the heavyweight championship. A heavyweight championship fight, I should say, where he got stomped by JDS. Number 3, my boy, BJ Penn, KOing Diego Sanchez. Actually, it wasn't a KO. It got stopped.
That's a good
one. It got stopped because that head kick busted Diego's head open so bad it made him move up a weight class, and apparently it sent him into a pretty deep depression. I was actually reading about that in the most recent UFC magazine. A little plug for them. That was a beautiful finish.
Jake, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, what's that?
Okay, when you were watching this fight, BJ Penn versus Diego Sanchez, the first round, we all remembered, fucking BJ hit him with that uppercut, rocked him, got him rocked, and Joe and Mike were going crazy. He got him against the cage, hit him a bunch, rinse and repeat for 4 rounds. And then the last round, when BJ threw that head kick and hit Diego Sanchez and it broke up and blood started coming out, where were you and what were you thinking? Because I was actually hanging out with a couple friends. We were drinking beers, and I, threw my beer across the room and jumped at the screen. Yeah, get him!
It's pretty funny. Most of the fights I've seen at home, but this was another fight I saw at a sports bar. I dragged all my roommates from college. It was my sophomore year. I dragged them all out to the bar. We watched it, and I was like, see, I told you, because I was a huge Penn fan, and none of them had really seen him fight. I was like, I told you he's a motherfucker, man. and when he threw it, it was kind of an awkward kick, and he doesn't throw head kicks typically, but man, I saved it. Saved the highlight. I think it was on SportsCenter on my DVR, and you could see it in slow-mo as the cut ripples across his forehead. That was awesome. I was so pumped. That was the fight I drug all my friends out to be like, watch my favorite fighter. He's awesome. And he performed.
Fuck yeah, he did.
My number 2 favorite top finish of all time happened just about a week ago. Chael Sonnen guillotining Shogun Rua. We've talked about it so much the last week. It was such an amazing fight. No one was really picking Sonnen for the sub. It was a crazy line in Vegas. And Sonnen locks in the second round guillotine, chokes one of the most legendary fighters in UFC history. Like I've said on the show before Chael, every man who'd ever beaten Shogun in the UFC got a title shot or a title defense in the next fight. He's that good. He's always been at the top of the heap. Like Ross said before, if John Jones just didn't exist, I think Sonnen could very well be the 205 champion. Number 1, Chael Sonnen is my favorite fighter of all time. But if I'm being unbiased, the greatest finish ever was Anderson Silva. Chael Sonnen won. Chael beat him up post to post, and Anderson Silva with a broken rib. I mean, Ross said it. You hate to love, you love to hate. Wraps up a beautiful triangle. Makes my favorite fighter ever tap. But god damn, it was that impressive. I was watching that at a friend's house. And I was rooting for Chael and was stoked that he was about to win. But just as an MMA fan, I had to appreciate the greatest fighter of all time putting forth the greatest finish of all time. And, god damn, that was a magical moment. Who hasn't... Chris, you fucking next. You second, cocksucker.
Alright. Are we talking about top 5 finishes of all time?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, all right. Number 5, Anderson Silva versus Vitor Belfort. This was January of 2011. Anderson was playing possum with Vitor, and then Vitor went for a punch, came back, and they stood there, and then Anderson extended his leg and knocked out Vitor Belfort. It was fucking beautiful. Number 4, Joe Lozon versus Melvin Gillard.
Yeah.
UFC 136. Melvin walked out like he had already won the fight. Yeah, dude. Fuck yeah, this guy's dead. They go out there. Joe Lozon does a jab, hits Melvin Gillard flush in the chin. Melvin falls down. He gets his back, flips him over, and chokes him out with the rear naked choke. It was beautiful.
White power.
Number 3, Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen won. How can you not include Chael Sonnen getting that 5th round, just fucking beating the shit out of Anderson. Then Anderson throws up that triangle and chokes him out. That was beautiful. Number 2, Henderson Bisping. Dan Henderson hit him with that left hook and then the right hand, knocked him out, and then jumped, into his guard and hit him in the face. It's beautiful. Number 1 for me, top 5 finishes of all time, Jose Aldo versus Cub Swanson. Jose Aldo touches gloves, steps back, and then runs into a bicycle knee, like Mortal Kombat, and fucking cuts up Cub Swanson. It was beautiful.
Fuck yeah. That's Chris's top 5. We are moving it along. Ross, what is your top 5? Man, I'm sorry, I just got a comment. I opened this tweet by Conor McGregor, sporting a beautiful leather purse and a beautiful cane, I might add too. Ross, what are your top 5 finishes of all time?
Well, I'd first like to say that there will be bias in here. I am very biased.
There will be bias.
I get a lot of hate on Twitter for being biased, so if you do not want to listen to it, please tune the fuck out right now. I don't want you to listen to it. Yes. So, first off, number 5, Scott Smith versus Pete Sell. If you haven't seen this fight, just like I said earlier, find it, pirate it, don't pirate it, pay for it, because we love Zuffa. And
yay, I love you,
watch it.
Zuffa.
I love both of you.
Because it is, Scott Smith gets hurt, has nothing left, decides, fuck it, he's coming at me, I'm just going to put everything in one punch.
You don't give a fuck!
Exactly, and he landed, and then he dealt with the pain after he got the win. Number 4, Fedor Emelianenko versus Fabricio Verdum. This fight shook the MMA world. Fedor dropped Verdum. To this day, we don't truly know if he dropped Verdum or Verdum was playing possum, so Fedor would get a good start. But Verdum, no one saw it coming. No one in the world saw it coming, and he shocked the world that night, which is why I have this at number 4. Number 3, Dan Henderson knocking out Michael Bisping at UFC 100. Michael Bisping talked so much shit. He acted like he was the next best thing and he was going to destroy Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson stayed silent all season on Tough. The entire lead up to the fight, they get into that cage and Hendo just puts his lights out with the greatest overhand ever, and he follows it up with a vicious extra punch on the ground. So that's number 3. Number 2, this is where my bias comes in. I was at the fight last week. I got to see it happen. It was one of the best moments I've ever had as an MMA fan, and that is Chael Sonnen submitting Shogun Rua.
My number 2 as well, my friend.
In the first round via guillotine choke. I'm a huge Chael Sonnen fan. That was the most magical moment I've ever seen in person, and one of the most magical moments ever for me as an MMA fan.
Thank God, man. Thank God.
And number 1 is my most magical, my favorite. I keep calling it magical. I feel like that's not the right word I should be using, but it's definitely my favorite moment in MMA history, and that is Chris Weidman knocking out Anderson Silva in the second round at UFC 162 to become the middleweight champion. To me, there's nothing better than that. That is the best finish of all time. Nobody saw it coming. Some people saw it coming. I saw it coming. But no one saw the way that he would beat Anderson Silva coming. So props to Chris Weidman. Props to all these guys on this list.
Certainly didn't, man. Good call.
Word on the street.
That's right. Rams is here in spirit for once agreeing with you that was a beautiful finish and not calling it a dive or anything preposterous. You all ready for the fourth topic?
Let's do it, baby.
Let's do it. And this will probably be, like Ross alluded to, the quickest one, the one we blow through like that. Ross, who are the top 5 fighters you would like to hang out with? Grab a beer, something along the lines of that.
All right, I'm just going to throw it right at you. I'm not going to give you any explanation. I will leave it up to you to figure it out on your own. Ready?
Powerful.
Number 5, Cowboy Cerrone. Number 4, Forrest Griffin. Number 3, Ronda Rousey. Number 2, the notorious Conor McGregor. And number 1, the greatest of all time, Chael P. Sonnen.
Yeah, baby.
I know why. I know why you got Ronda Rousey on that list, you fucking cheeky bastard. Chris, who are your top 5?
I'll tell you what. I'm going War Machine, number 5. Nick Diaz, number 4. Number 3, Conor McGregor. Number 2, Forrest Griffin. And number 1, the best in the business, the best that ever was, the best that ever will be, Chael P. Sonnen.
I'll fucking breeze through mine as well. Why not? Number 5, Darren Cruikshank. Number 4, Conor Notorious McGregor. That'd be fun as fuck. I'm also an Irish bastard. Number 3, Pat Barry. You know, he's got a sense of humor. Number 2, BJ Penn. Roll up a couple L's with that motherfucker and eat a cheeseburger. And number 1, I hate to play a broken record, but he was number 1 for both of you as well. A guy who all of us have spoken to, but we won't get into that. A guy named a guy named Chael Patrick Sonnen, number one of all three of our list. I love it when fans say, he's such a dickhead asshole, fuck Chael Sonnen. Like, yeah, because you really know his personality. If you knew half of the person that Chael Sonnen was, you wouldn't be playing that tune, because Chael really is a fucking grade A gentleman. You gotta love the guy, and that's why he's number one.
That guy showed us the ultimate friendship of saying, hey,
this
how's
guy,
it going?
That
He's amazing.
guy. Last round. Let's do it. The final round. Which you can catch probably shortly if you follow Ross Finkelstein, E before the L. Get it right. And this last topic is the top 5 fighters outside the UFC. Chris, I'll start it off with you. Who are your top 5?
Well, thank you very much. Number 5, your mom.
She's really good.
Yeah, she's so good. Number 4, Pat Curran. He's the featherweight Bellator champion. Fantastic fighter. That guy kicks some ass. Number 3, Ben Askren. I hate him. I think he's worse than Jake Shields, but I think he will make an impact in the UFC. Number 2, Eddie Alvarez. He lost to my number 1, but he came back and he knocked out Pitbull. So I think he's worthy of this list here. Number 2, Eddie Alvarez. Number 1, Mike Chandler. That guy's badass.
Ooh, and when I went to turn off the mute button on the side of my head, I knocked the cans right off my fucking dome. But yeah, Chandler is a goddamn badass. Ross, top 5 outside the UFC. Do you have my mom as well?
No, she did not make the cut. She
has
a loss.
Yeah, but she's top 10 for you. Yeah, she's top 10 at least, right?
I don't know. She has a couple losses on her record, and they're too recent for me to put her in the top 10. So I'm sorry.
You gotta give my mom. You gotta give my mom credit because she knows how to finish a guy.
And we will move on. Number 5, Pat Curran. It's a lot better than Jake's mom. It's 10 times better than Jake's mom, actually. A billion times.
Debatable.
Pat Curran is one of the best fighters outside of the UFC. No questions asked. This is an easy decision. He's finishing guys. He killed Joe Warren. Joe Warren is still not walking this earth. He had a great fight with Pitbull. He's a finisher. He's got great skills. He's got heart. All the makings of a champion. This guy is going places, and he's still young. He's only 25 years old. Number 4, I was a bit sour on the guy before, but damn, he is impressive. Marlon Moraes, he's got crazy striking.
Yeah.
This crafty Brazilian has, once again, all the tools to be a champion. I can't wait to see him in the UFC. I can't wait to see him in a fight against Renan Barão. Just the striking there is unbelievable. That is high-level striking at its finest. Number 3 is the man himself, Eddie Alvarez. Guy got fucked by Bellator. He's back in Bellator. He's got to do 1, maybe 2 more fights, and then he'll get to be in the UFC finally. But remember, this guy is still elite. Just because he's been out for a year and he lost to Michael Chandler, don't take anything away from the guy. He is still one of the best in the world. Number 2 is the guy who I believe will be the future 170 champion in the UFC, and that's Ben Askren. His wrestling style is it's completely dominant. No one can stop it. He fights to just keep top position and land as many strikes as possible from top position. Just wears you down. He's very top heavy, and he just goes with the flow. If he goes for a submission, he won't put all his effort into it so that if it fails, he loses the position. He makes sure that no matter what, he stays in top position and he continues to pounce and just land all these strikes. And people call it boring, and it damn sure is boring, but it is effective, and he destroys people. And number 1 is the guy I call the best lightweight in the world. You just don't know it yet. Michael Chandler. He is perfect everywhere. He has no holes in his game. He's young. He is only getting better and better and better. He is going to be the 155 champion in the UFC one day, and I have no doubt about that. Michael Chandler will be the UFC lightweight champion.
Yeah, we actually had someone call in, which we always do. Encourage you to call in. The number is right there on the video you're watching. If you can't read, that's 213-457-3380. A familiar face calling in. It's the Truth. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, nothing much. I just saw you guys were doing a podcast at 4:30 a.m. So I missed
you. Yeah, I missed you.
Did you really?
Random ass podcast. I am not gonna get your top 5 for each topic, but I'm gonna get your number 1 on each topic. We're doing sort of a new thought. We're doing 5 topics each one. We're breaking down our top 5. So really quick, lightning round. Yao. What was the? Oh yeah, yeah. What is the fight you're most pumped for coming up in the future that's been announced?
GSP versus Johnny Hendricks.
That's right. Your boy's gonna lose his belt. Yeah. Who is the best MMA fighter who's not currently a UFC champion?
Melvin Gillard, without a doubt.
Hell yeah. What is your favorite finish in MMA history?
When Donald Cerrone fucked up Melvin Gillard and knocked his ass out. I loved it.
That's a hard one. Right now, off the top, I'd have to say Demetrius Johnson's armbar that he just got.
That was a pretty sweet armbar.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I got a question for you. Who is the fighter that you would like the most to hang out with?
I'd have to say Chael Sonnen.
Beautiful. That was number 1 for the. Yep, Chael goes 4 for 4 as far as who we'd most like to chill with. And lastly, who do you think is the best fighter who's not currently in the UFC?
Shit.
That's a hard one. You got Bellator.
You got Michael Chandler, you got Ben Askren. Those are probably the 2 that stand out. Eddie Alvarez.
Yep.
Pat Curran.
Yeah, between Tyrone Spong and
Tyrone
Eddie
Spong. You were fucking black zillion partners. Well, shit. We're wrapping it up, but you may as well stay on the call for all the post podcast bullshit. Unless you want to talk about anything else. All right.
No, I'm good. I'm actually waiting to leave DC right now.
You having a fun?
So if you hear anything crazy,
don't go.
You having a fun time in Washington?
Don't leave us, man.
Fun.
Yo, you went skating. We saw. Did you bust your ass? Did you bust a move? Are you good at skating? What was the deal there?
I fell a lot. I fell a whole bunch. I'm really sore right now.
Yo, the man might be a gold medalist in jiu-jitsu, but you put a pair of skates on him, he's gonna look like he's at bum status. I'll break down my top 5 fighters outside the UFC, and we'll wrap a bow on this bitch. And yeah, my top 5 fighters. Number 5 from the World Series of Fighting, I got Josh Berkman. He just finished John Fitch pretty impressively, so I'm really looking forward to see what's in his future. My next 4 are all Bellator people. This has been a very Bellator heavy list. Pat Curran, number 4, the featherweight champ. He really put it to Joe Warren when he got the championship. Hasn't looked past since. I actually have Michael Chandler, number 3. I know he was really high on your list. But Chandler, number 3, even though he is a hell of a fighter, he is going to be tied down to Bellator for a while, and I'm looking forward to whenever the fuck he can actually make it into the UFC. Number 2, I have Eddie Alvarez. I think Eddie beats Chandler in the rematch. Eddie is going to have it. Like, if anyone has ever stepped into the cage with a chip on their shoulder, you're going to see it with Eddie Alvarez. He's going to come out guns blazing, and I'm pretty sure he's going to beat Michael Chandler on that Tito Rampage card. He's just a hell of a fighter, man. And number 1, I got Ben Askren. Ross said he's a future UFC champ. I don't know if I'm going that far, but he's never lost a fight, and he is damn impressive. So yeah, that's my list. That's all of our list. That's our top 5. We went 5 rounds. We went the distance with you motherfuckers. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at the MMA Podcast. Chris, where do we find you on Twitter?
At C. Lowenstein.
That's right. Yeah, the truth. Where do we find your ass?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Yao_the truth. You should know how to spell it.
That's YAO for you illiterate fucks. And last but certainly not least, we got the best Jew in the goddamn business, Ross Finkelstein. Where do we find you?
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find me on Twitter at Ross Finkelstein, E before the L, and right now, right here on the top 5, whatever the hell we call this shit, I am making an announcement this week, right now, I am making the announcement that I will have the first ever Final Round podcast live. No guest, but it will be amazing. We will break down UFC 164.
That's right. So follow him on Twitter to find out the date, the time, all that good shit. A programming note. Tomorrow, I think we're going to have a word on the street. Definitely follow Ramses. It is the motherfucking word on the street. Where's the drop?
On the street.
There it is. Follow him, The Aunt Jimmy Show. I think he'll be doing a show tomorrow, Sunday night. He'll be doing a show Tuesday like he usually does. We're moving the MMA podcast from Wednesdays to Fridays, and this week we're going to have a Monday and a Friday show just because there's so many fucking UFCs, so much shit to get to. We don't even know what this was called. The top 5 for 5 rounds. The final round, or no, Ross, here's the final round. Who the fuck knows? We might do it again, we might not, but we'll definitely be around. Follow us all on Twitter. We gave you the handles. Follow our buddies too. Westland Eagle AH, that's Alan, Elena Danielle, Amber Matthews, Hiro Shinwoo, Apex 155, Tech Kicks, all you motherfuckers, MMA Mental. We love the shit out of you, and we'll fucking be around a while. Later.